The MonsterVerse dropped a now-in-production teaser for the upcoming Supernova movie a year ago to build up hype for another kaiju showdown, but I find it quite funny how the universe is treating the whole situation. I mean, in 2014, when it all started with Godzilla destroying cities, I didn't think this would grow into a full-fledged cinematic universe, but Legendary Pictures somehow brought all these monsters together. And from the teaser, it looks like there's a whole workplace culture built around them. Although the MonsterVerse still feels like a franchise in the making, we got the announcement of an upcoming sequel, Godzilla x Kong Supernova, which is just around the corner, waiting for release in 2027. So what exactly are we expecting from this one? More spectacles of kaiju wars, or a stronger emotional story for the final clash to hit us even harder than before? Find that out. Stick with me till the end of this video, where I'm going to break down everything we know so far about the production of Supernova. Where Godzilla x Kong Supernova fits into this crazy MonsterVerse story. Legendary's MonsterVerse started with the 2014 American reboot of Godzilla, and from there, it took the classic kaiju mythology that you've seen in the old Japanese movies and turned it into something much bigger. Along the way, you probably heard these terms and their lore by now, such as Hollow Earth, Titans, or the shady scientific organization called Monarch. Well, these have always been the foundation of the MonsterVerse and will get even more important for the upcoming sequel, Supernova. I'll come back to these details later, but first, we should know exactly where to place this movie on the timeline. If you've never watched a single MonsterVerse film, things will be a little tough for you to understand. Given the fact that Supernova is a direct sequel to the 2024 New Empire movie, I think you should know the context for better understanding. So, in New Empire's final battle, the rivalry was put aside as these two alpha titans, our Godzilla and Kong, teamed up against ancient creatures like Scar King and Shimo. Well, that was quite a reluctant truce, but it eventually killed the Scar King and freed Shimo from its control. Godzilla's first appearance in the movies dates back to 1954, and the upcoming sequel is going to be the 40th Godzilla film overall. Meanwhile, Kong is returning for the 14th time in the movies. However, in the MonsterVerse alone, Supernova will be the 6th position as per the franchise's official order. The film is produced by Legendary Pictures and co-produced by Toho, while Warner Brothers is going to take care of the distribution. We've got several pieces of information about the production, and just like all the fans around the world, I've started speculating. So let's get into the world of Supernova to see what's been cooking all along. How we went from classic Godzilla and Kong to this sequel. As you can see, with just 6 films, the MonsterVerse is still an infant in comparison to what these massive cinematic universes of Godzilla and King Kong look like on their own. As I said earlier, 1954 saw the first arrival of Godzilla, and ever since, this nuclear-age monster has become a constant in multiple eras of Japanese films. Meanwhile, Kong, who first appeared in 1933 in the black and white era, climbed his way up the Empire State Building and then made his way into Hollywood. The 2014 American reboot reintroduced Godzilla, who basically restores the balance of the planet. The idea was intriguing to the producers, who could think of many other avenues to show kaiju battles in the upcoming films. So there came Kong Skull Island, where we got King Kong as this massive ape guardian of Skull Island. And then Godzilla King of the Monsters brought these kaiju legends back to the war zone, bringing more creatures along the way, like Ghidorah, Mothra, and Rodan. But in Godzilla vs. Kong, they changed their motivation. Now, after fighting each other for a while, Godzilla and Kong are teaming up against Mechagodzilla, the evil robotic counterpart to Godzilla. And bam! This particular idea looked far more enjoyable than their same old rivalry, so in New Empire, these two once again formed an uneasy truce. MonsterVerse was built on 2 main things. First, the audience response, and second, the box office success, and in both these aspects, the film kept the promise. New Empire grossed $570 million in the market, so they just couldn't help but think about a future project to expand their lore. And Supernova is just the result of that crazy, creative team doubling down on their MonsterVerse frenzy. Who's really in charge here, and how this movie came together? My obsession with monster films is a big factor in why I keep track of these movies, but the major reason why I like them is that every one of them goes for a different vibe, and a lot of that comes from who's actually behind the camera. Perhaps Supernova will see that tonal shift after Adam Wingard, who previously directed Godzilla vs. Kong and New Empire, stepped aside from the production due to scheduling issues. Now, a new voice and new vision came in through Grant Spudor, who might not be a famous name, but his previous film, I Am Mother, was quite an intense story, to be honest. Now, Wingard was known for his modernized way of showing kaijus, like high-speed action sequences, which also have the look and feel of a comic book. Every scene in the final few minutes felt like we gotta turn our brains off and just enjoy the fight. But for Supernova, Legendary is probably not going to go for that. Spudor has his way of telling character-driven stories, so there's a good chance this time the human side gets a lot more breathing space in the room. The screenplay comes from David Callahan, who had previously written for Godzilla in 2014, and backing these two main creative heads, we have our usual team of producers from Legendary: Mary Parent, Alex Garcia, Eric McLeod, Brian Rogers, and Thomas Tull. Now, if I come to the production standpoint, there are a hell of a lot of things to talk about. First, the trade reports have confirmed that the shooting kicked off in Australia, mainly at Village Roadshow Studios in Queensland, which is a common place for many such big-budget, VFX-heavy action films in Hollywood. And this makes sense because if you're building a giant monster movie with some city-damaging scenes, you need a space that can keep up with that ambition. But Australia is just the beginning, as the production is on a global tour moving through cities like Mexico City, London, Bangkok, and even Mumbai in India. I'm gonna cover it all one after another, but first, let's know the story behind the title, Supernova, and what it has to do with all these humans in the movie. The humans in the middle of all this and what Supernova is hinting at. Alright, no matter how much Titan smackdown we get on screen, at the center of the MonsterVerse, there have always been human stories, and Supernova is not changing that formula. So let's break down the cast to get a better sense of this world the film is trying to build. So in the confirmed lineup, we already have a known character, Dan Stevens, returning as Trapper Beasley, who previously went on the Hollow Earth expedition. He survived the final battle, so there's no doubt he's going to be a strong link in the upcoming film, especially because of his expertise on Titan biology. Then there are even more famous names associated with this film, like Matthew Modine, Sam Neill, Jack O'Connell, Delroy Lindo, Caitlin Dever, and Alicia Debham Carey. Now the character details are still under wraps, but looking at the cast, I can already imagine what they might look like in the film. Modine's picture from the set is already out, and we see him wearing a navy blue military outfit. I'm not sure, but he definitely looks like the leader of an unknown military organization. Apart from Modine, there's Sam Neill, who you may know from many sci-fi thrillers, and as a fan of his bizarre acting skills from Possession and The Event Horizon, I can't really imagine him as a clean hero in this movie. Maybe he can either take up the role of an evil scientist, or maybe I'm stereotyping him too much. So on the one hand, we have military people and scientists trying to control these creatures, and on the other, there will be civilians who will be dragged into the mess. And after all, that's the point of kaiju battles. If you mess with nature, nature will take revenge in its own way. Now let's take a step back from casting for a second and talk about the title, Supernova. Initially, the production started under a secret working title, Zeus, which is a pretty common thing in Hollywood to maintain the privacy of the production. But then Supernova popped into their mind, and we want to know exactly why. So I'm not trying to turn this into a science lecture, but I think most of you know what a supernova is. It's basically an explosive death of a star. But why does that matter in a MonsterVerse film? Well, fans started speculating that after Mechagodzilla and Shimo had made their debut, it's time for a space Godzilla to make some space in this universe. Maybe that's why Supernova is an apt choice, but till now, there's no official confirmation on that theory. Maybe it's not that literal, but just a metaphor for some massive catastrophe that'll bring the death of this planet. what we've actually seen: teaser shots, promo hints, and set stories. Legendary and Toho are pretty tight-lipped when it comes to BTS shots, so no matter how many photos or videos are out there on the internet, they don't give away anything about the plot. As a starter, we already got a big announcement teaser last year, which makes it a lot easier to understand what's been going on. So the announcement teaser opens in a Monarch office, where an emergency distress call of a Titan sighting is coming from Sedona, Arizona. And if you've seen Godzilla, the King of Monsters, you can recall that Sedona was the containment zone for Scylla. Now, Scylla is dead, and I'm not sure who's emerging from this place, but the location itself can be a danger zone. Fan speculation is a big deal for the MonsterVerse, and that's why the marketing team launched a now-in-production teaser to keep us guessing for 2 years. On top of that, there are some Easter eggs spotted in the teaser, like the Godzilla bobblehead or the mug with "Keep Kong, Carry On" written on it. Now that's where I feel like these alerts have gone so rampant for these Monarch scientists that a distress call like this is just another Tuesday for them. And then I have to talk about the coolest way of engaging the audience through this teaser. So there's a hotline number shown in the teaser, area code 240-MON-ARCH, where fans can call to report any Titan sighting nearby. It's called the smartest way of involving your audience in the making of a film. Well, if you call on this number, they'll send a text to your phone asking you to be a member of their Monarch community. So if you want to do that, go ahead and have fun. Anyways, the leaked pictures from the set tell something else. The situation is not stuck within the Monarch office anymore. It's escalating to different cities, like I just said earlier. Now, several pictures of the filming location in Moab, Utah are suggesting that Supernova is going to focus on Hollow Earth mythology even more than we expect. Then the repeated shootings in cities like London, Mexico City, and Mumbai suggest that maybe the final battle of the film will take place in an urban setting, which means more and more destruction, just like it was in Godzilla, the King of Monsters. There are several shots of an unknown military organization that perhaps works separately from Monarch. It could be a reimagination of the G-Force, the Japanese military organization that fights these Titans, or it could be something like that, but with a different name. However, Australia is still the main base for production, although many leaked videos and photos of the military suggest they're in several other parts of the UK rather than just filming in London. When we're finally seeing it, and what it could mean for the MonsterVerse. March 26th, 2027 is the release date, and that's been confirmed across the board. The date was first confirmed through the teaser rollout, and later the official studio and the trade coverage reconfirmed it. Now, I think this has become a pattern for them because Godzilla vs. Kong came out in March, and so did The New Empire. And honestly, it is safe to release such a big-scale film early in the year rather than racing against the crowded slot of summer releases. Now, this 1 year of delay might feel like the longest time, but let me tell you why this is necessary. So any kind of VFX-heavy action film needs at least a year-long post-production because it's the actual phase where the scenes are rebuilt by the VFX artists. The creature design and the making of the whole environment are all going to take place during this phase called post-production. So the delay is inevitable. However, since we got some time to explore fan demands, speculations, and general notions about plot and cast, what do you think Supernova could mean for this MonsterVerse? I believe the sequel can give birth to many other stories, a little background data, and more characters that can find their place in future TV shows, like Monarch, which came out as a TV series in 2023. So yeah, Supernova sounds like the biggest turning point for this universe, or more like a setup for whatever these monster tales are trying to become next. What the people making it are actually saying. People working on the movie, whether they're actors or producers, have said quite a lot about Supernova, but all of their statements point to one thing: the film is gonna raise the ceiling again. I've been listening to this one phrase for a while, and that came from the director of the film, Grant Spudor. He called this film a, quote, cataclysmic world-ending event, unquote, which means this film is hinting at a mad level of disaster in the world. But that can't be the only defining phrase for this film because it's too generic and plain. So let's hear what the actors and creative brains behind the film have to say about this one. Speaking with KTVU in Oakland, Delroy Linda said that a big CGI-driven film must have an emotional core, which comes only from humans. So not just these kaiju wars, but according to Lindo, it's going to be as humanly relatable as possible. Meanwhile, at the Tampa Bay Comic Convention, Matthew Modine's comment on his expectations was hilarious. this. His initial reaction was, "I just worked on Godzilla x Kong Supernova. That was pretty exciting, to work with Godzilla." But then he had to face the reality, and of course, the absurdity of filming a monster movie. He said, "Wait a minute, Godzilla's not here." He talked about having to stare into empty space, pretending that there was a Titan monster in front of him. He later added, "When you go to drama school, you do exercises where you have to see things that aren't there. So I was happy to pretend that Godzilla was there." Dan Stevens already described the sequel as out of this world. And to confirm that statement, costume designer Ann Foley talked about the globetrotting experience they're having with the filmmaking process. After all that, this is going to be a big release for 2027, which may outshine a great number of upcoming releases for that year. So yeah, that's where we are right now. There's a hell of a lot of information floating around, but it still doesn't feel like concrete stuff to be absolutely sure about. And to be honest, I like it that way, because being kept in the dark until the official trailer drops hits harder than anything else. Last but not least, I really hope Supernova will end up being the godfather of all the movies we saw in the MonsterVerse, because that does seem like the level the producers are aiming for. For everything else, we'll just have to wait and see. On that note, this video is over. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed the video and subscribe to our channel. Also, please let us know in the comments about your thoughts on Supernova and the pre-existing movies of the Titans. Until then, goodbye, and I'll see you in the next one.